In historic business deals, the Dangote Petroleum Refinery yesterday announced that the United States imported over 2 million barrels of jet fuel from the 650,000 barrels per day facility this March alone, underscoring the growing global impact of the world's largest single-train refinery located in Lagos. The entrance of the Dangote refinery into the U.S. market is expected to see jet fuel hit a 2-year high in the country this month, as well as lower the prices of the aviation fuel in the peak summer travel season, according to trade analysts. Data from ship tracking service Kepler, referenced by a statement from the Dangote refinery, show that 6 vessels carrying around 1.7 million barrels of jet fuel from the refinery arrived at U.S. ports this month, while another vessel, the Hafnia Andromeda, is set to arrive at the Everglades terminal on March 29 with approximately 348,000 barrels of jet fuel. This shipment to the U.S. followed the export of 3 cargoes of jet fuel, totaling around 130 million liters from Nigeria to Saudi Arabia by the Dangote refinery, which has already demonstrated its ability to compete with European refiners on petrol exports. All right, with a spot of good news this morning. It's a win for local business in Nigeria, but a win for the United States economy in terms of the price of jet fuel and its impact on summer travels, and hopefully even see the costs of aviation there. Your take on this story?
You know, Dangote Refinery reminds me of the Eiffel Towers. And I'll tell the correlating story. When Gustav Eiffel set out to build the Eiffel Tower, about 300 meters high, 300 intellectuals of the day wrote 300 destructive articles. That's symbolic. For every meter of the Eiffel Tower, there was a destructive article telling Gustav Eiffel, you are mad. At first, Gustav Eiffel had never done something like that in his life. He was a bridge engineer, and you are building such a tower. But today, over 100 years after, you talk about France, you talk about the Eiffel Tower. All the criticisms are all gone. Gustav Eiffel's idea remains. That's like the Dangote refinery. There were a lot of criticisms at the start, but look at Dangote refinery today. It stands tall like the Eiffel Tower. The Dangote refinery has now reversed the trend of history. Now we are now exporting refined products to America. We are exporting refined products to the UAE. The largest single-train refinery. We also now matter in the international scheme of things. But for every great advancement, there must be a force that wants to pull it down. And sadly here, the force is the Nigerian government. Make it possible for Dangote to buy crude in Naira. I know we have a lot of forward sale. I can mention all the animals. You know, most of the forward sales now are named after animals. From Operation Gazelle to Operation Leopard, it goes on and on. Till 2030, 2040, 2035 in some cases. And because of this, and we are not even pushing our weight as regards production, then the deal we initially signed to give him the chance to buy crude in Naira is hampered. But Dangote refinery is a moving train. He keeps buying his crude and he keeps cracking to provide value. The Nigerian government should support him. That share initially that NNPC said, no, they were withdrawn, they were not going to complete the payment. They should complete the payment. It's a thing of joy for this country. We should rally round and support him. You know, because he's not only affecting petrol refining, the manufacturing sector, polyethylene, that is used in manufacturing, for the textile industry, that will now save Nigeria millions of naira. Just like how the likes of Indorama, when they came back on board, started saving the country a lot of millions of naira. I was at a forum, at the African CEO Forum. I was part of those that in fact, it was on my panel session that the chief of Indorama was there, and I interviewed him. And you can see how they had reversed the trend. That's what Dangote Refinery is doing. And man also alluded to it, that this will also bring jobs back to the service sector, to the textile sector. So sectors that have been dead in Nigeria will also come back to life because many things are tied with the petchem sector. That's the petrochemical sector. Your laptop has an element of petrochemical. This camera, catching all I'm saying, has an element of petrochemical. The cords on my mic has an element of petrochemical. Everything is petrochemical. So for me, it's a good news, and I feel very proud to be in Nigeria, a great sense of triumphalism. But the government must do their part in supporting not only Dangote, but Nord Motors, Innoson, Nigerian businesses in general. That's what they call a state capitalism. Right. That's what China is doing.
Yes.
Okay, the first point to make is that this is a welcome development. But this has been made very clear from the very beginning by Devakuma. Mr. Devakuma is the CEO of the refinery, and he had made the point that, look, if it is difficult to do business in Nigeria, the Dangote refinery has the capacity to sell to other markets. And as we speak, that Dangote refinery has been selling even to Saudi Arabia, I think jet fuel. And also now it is selling to the United States. In other words, this is an open market. And Nigeria should know that. So when we play the local politics of Naira for crude and all of that, you know, what the Dangote refinery had established from the very beginning is that they are in a market that is international, and that market is open when you have your refineries. The question to ask is that Nigeria has eggs on its face. We have refineries in Port Harcourt, we have in Kaduna. Up to this moment, those refineries have not worked. What we have now seen is a private enterprise. The vision of one man can highlight, isolate, foreground the various areas in which the Nigerian government over the years has failed the people. One man, patriotic commitment to his country, is the one now helping to enhance Nigeria's image in the world and also to advance our economic interests in terms of savings on foreign exchange and in terms of opportunities and inspiration for other, entrepreneurs within the Nigerian space who may want to be like Dangote. He has proven that it is possible. Now, let me go to the United States part. Now, we're told that the reason the U.S. is making this importation is because a facility in New Jersey, owned by Phillips Oil, is undergoing routine maintenance. And because of that, they have to look for other markets. Now, the U.S. has to look for markets elsewhere for where to purchase jet fuel. You know that only this week, President Trump placed a ban, signed an executive order, saying any country that imports fuel or gas from Venezuela, from which last year alone, 230,000 barrels per day, was procured by the United States, would receive additional sanctions different from the reciprocal tariffs of April 2, which Trump calls Liberation Day. Number 3 point is that, look, in the face of all of this, so this export to the U.S., will it also attract tariffs? And what will those tariffs be, So I've made the point that, these are the basic issues. But the same Dangote refinery has pointed out that they will be going for routine maintenance, by June in the facility that produces over 200,000 barrels. So they've already served notice. But the residual point is the fact that this is, a project that is based on vision, that is based on commitment to Nigeria, and that is making Nigeria, putting Nigeria in a position where we can say, well, if our country now sells jet fuel to the United States, tariffs or not. So that achievement is something I think that needs to be celebrated, and Dangote's heroism needs to be underlined again. Nigeria should find a way of sorting out its domestic issues.
Absolutely.
Devakuma made it clear that this is an international business, and Dangote is in it for profit, having invested over $20 billion.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to Nigeria, first of all. When they say a child does well, everybody becomes the parent or the relative of that child. But in truth, Nigerians gain to benefit because when we talk about a local refiner or an indigenous refiner, then we talk about the potentials it has for the economy as a whole. In fact, a lot of people are saying that, analysts have opined that if the president must achieve his $1 trillion economy, organizations or factories or producers like Dangote Refinery must be supported to excel. And it's not just for Dangote Refinery, they're just a prototype of the potentials that exist, not just in the petrochemical industry in Nigeria, but across all sectors. And that's why even manufacturing comes into play. Some of the things that we should look at is that, number one, it demonstrates, like I mentioned, the potentials that exist. Number two, it demonstrates the fact that we're able to earn forex through exports, especially of a very important, a very essential product across the world. Number three is that perhaps we're able to roll back the years of waste and lost opportunities whereby we're not able to maximize our crude oil exploration and be able to export finished products as opposed to just exporting the raw materials. So it shows that these are some of the things that could have happened in the last few years and the gains in terms of revenue that the country could have earned. But rather than crying over spilt milk and looking at the past, let's look forward and see how we can begin to rectify that and see how we can, as a nation, through these private businesses, be able to, export finished products. So it sets an example as well for those who are ambitious and would want to come into this market as well. Number three, we talked about the impact on the forex, on Nigeria's forex, and how it reduces the pressure on the forex rather than having to source forex. If we can maximize the Dangote refinery, we're able to, rather than source forex for local for importation, we're able to even attract that much needed forex. And then it also brings into the questions as to what is happening with our own local refineries, what's happening to Nigerian refineries, Nigerian-owned refineries, like the Port Harcourt refinery. Yes, they say it's been operating for the last 180 days non-stop, but as we say, let's show working. What are some of the gains that have been gotten as a result of these refineries working? NNPCL has said they will come on stream, and they have been able to demonstrate that, okay, we fulfilled our promises. But we can also see what Dangote refinery has been able to do in terms of its international standing, not just being able to feed the local market, but also able to compete with European refiners, also a testament to the quality of the product. And I hope that finally puts paid to that argument as to whether or not, the product coming out of the Dangote refinery is able to compete internationally and globally. If they export to the United States of America, then very high standards are required for that requirement. So absolutely done. So in terms of the Warri refinery, Port Harcourt refinery, what's happening with that? I think it helps us to see that this is not rocket science. With clear direction, proper management, great leadership, and an enabling environment for businesses, it's not rocket science to run a refinery and actually be able to gain some much needed revenue from that refinery. And so this is a challenge as well, and hopefully an example setting for the Nigerian counterpart to do even better. Also, just finally, the polypropylene, which is used in the textile industry, would cost us or would save Nigeria $267 million when Dangote Refinery is able to meet the local demand and also shore up the manufacturing industry, especially Nigeria's textile industry, which is much needed at this time. So congratulations again to Nigerians, as always, and of course to the Dangote Refinery. Let's move on very quickly to our next story for this morning. A federal high court sitting in Port Harcourt has dismissed the suit filed against General Hydrocarbons Limited by the First Bank of Nigeria. Justice E.A. Obile dismissed the entire suit on the grounds that the court is bereft of requisite jurisdiction to entertain the case. In dismissing the case, the court upheld GHL's notice of preliminary objection, challenging its jurisdiction to entertain the suit. The court agreed with GHL's submission in the notice of preliminary objection and dismissed the entire suit filed by First Bank for being an abuse of court process and a breach of the orders of Justice Alagoa issued on 12th December 2024. The court also upheld the argument of GHL that the ex parte orders of 9th January 2025 had lapsed by operation of law. This has now paved the way for an unhindered arbitration at the Lagos Court of Arbitration, where GHL has dragged FBN seeking hundreds of millions of dollars in damages for multiple breaches of FBN's obligations. All right, so we followed this story closely, and at every point brought up updates in the court processes, court proceedings, and this is another mark in the journey towards reaching a resolution between GHL and First Bank. Your take on this story, Rufai?
So there were a lot of back and forth between GHL and First Bank. Both parties went to an agreement, to be able to service the wells and all of that, and there had been an agreement for a while. A dispute occurred. First Bank did, go to court. And many processes were served on GHE, Irma River, which GHE also went to court, and they've been able to push back most of GHL, beg your pardon, went back to court, and they've been able to push back most of these processes. I think even before now, the case of arbitration had been on, at a point in time, and which we think that companies in dispute should be able to go for. All of this is just, the case of jurisdiction that GHL has cited before. I mean, it's still subject to me seeing the CTC of all of this and all of that. And First Bank definitely will still have a chance to be able to react, to also this story because, for the sake of hearing, both parties in the matter. But most importantly, as it is with every company out there, and companies when they have dispute, definitely they'll go through the level of arbitration. That has been on in a while, and they'll be able to settle, their impasse because we need both companies to be able to come together for the development of the country. I like to look at the big picture. What's the big picture? If the well involved is producing, it's for the benefit of Nigeria. It gets more to our production updates. And that well also needs the bank, to be able to fund it. So when they have a dispute, obviously we know it will not last forever. Once both parties can settle out their dispute and arbitration, and then the progress of Nigeria continues. So Nigeria first in all of this.
Nigeria first. Thanks. Dr. Bati.
Okay, see, in commercial agreements or contractual agreements, when you sign a memorandum of understanding, there are clauses. Some of those clauses include resort to arbitration. Now, under arbitration, you also choose the place of arbitration, whether it's in Nigeria or elsewhere. Now, but in this dispute, what I have seen is that the First Bank of Nigeria quickly jumped the gun. How did they jump the gun? Because they saw that they needed to preserve the rest. So if in their memorandum of understanding, there is already a clause that if anything goes wrong, we go to arbitration, and this will be the place of arbitration. What their lawyers did was to quickly make an issue out of the rest. The rest is the subject matter. What is the subject matter of the dispute? Now, Justice Obile in Port Harcourt, of the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt, has now returned them, both parties involved, to arbitration. And in that arbitration, these matters can be sorted out. We have had many cases, of disputes of this nature where the matter was resolved in arbitration. But on the other part, the lawyers what they will struggle to do is to preserve the rest. So they may have jumped the gun, but even in arbitration, the rest is also what they will argue, but they can reach, it's called an alternative dispute resolution. So it's not every matter that goes to court. There are things that you can resolve away from the face of the court. But what, whoever is playing smart is trying to do is to preserve the rest. So now they go to arbitration. We cannot prejudge what the outcome of the arbitration will be.
All right, thank you so much for breaking down Rufai and Dr. Bati.